Hello there, friends. Chris Slum from Molten Media here. I am also a part-time instructor at Pyramind here in San Francisco for the Remix production class. What I would like to show you guys today is a little creative technique that I use when I'm doing remixes. It's often something I show quite a bit in the class that I teach at Pyramind. That is simply how to use, in a creative way, the function within Logic Audio called Convert to EXS Instrument. I find that this is a great way to source samples and reprogram them in a synergistic way that allows you to have really compelling intros and outros or subsections of the remix that tie in perfectly to the original content because it's sourced from the original content. So I just want to show you a couple of steps that I go through to get that and see if it resonates with you. One of the first things I like to do when I'm doing the remix is find sections of the original. It's up here. In this case, I'm working with a song from a group called Snow Patrol called Could You Be Happy? Let's take a quick listen to that.
You could be happy and I won't know.
Well, I think I would know by the way he's singing. I like to look for some parts in the original that has some interesting texture and tone to it, even before I even have conceptualized how I might put that together. Simply looking for sounds and feel and mood that I can create a general color palette from. And that way, when I'm in the creative mode, I have lots of options and can see what sticks. So in this case, I found this little part right here, which is a simple 4-bar area before the vocals start. I'll solo that for you.
You could be happy.
Has that little toy box sound, really playful and happy. And what I did was I selected the region here, held down the control key, come down here and convert to new sampler track. And when you do that, you get two options. You can create zones or slices if you've ever worked with Recycle. Basically, this is where Logic is going to make a cut and export to the EXS sampler. And there are two ways you can do that. You can do it by a whole region, or you can do it by transient markers. I like to do transient markers in this initial phase because I don't really want to know what the cuts are going to be. I just want to hear some happy accidents and perhaps get some cuts and some clips that have some interesting tone that I might not have done if I just went by the grid. In this case, took my scissor tool. If I were to come in and cut these myself, like so, I could keep making these cuts along this region and then export that as regions, but these are defined by me up front. Now sometimes that's helpful if you're doing, let's say, an intro of a song that's got just beats to it, pretty fat live drum kit, and you want to just take out kick, snare, hat, etc. Sometimes it makes sense to cut those out specifically and then export those to an EXS instrument where you can then replay them. In this case, let's undo these and just do it the normal way through transient markers. And you end up with an instrument. I'm going to do this and then erase it because I've already done it, but I want to show you the process. Convert to new sampler track. You can call this whatever you want. We'll call this Snow Patrol instrument 1. C1 is where you would have the first note of the cut start. G8 would be where you'd have it end. Now you can come in here and select that range yourself, but for the purpose of moving through this, let's just leave it at the default C1 to G8. That's going to analyze, and at every zero crossing point, it's going to cut its own slice. Where they are on the key is not related to what key the actual note from the sample is in, but rather just a defined trigger point. meaning C1 isn't necessarily the key of C in this sample. Now what I like to do is immediately delete that info, because that's what I'm not looking to do is take a pre-existing region and copy it on a MIDI track and just have it play like it is up here. I want to have these slices exported to a controller keyboard, which you can't see here, but I have one to my right, and then I like to be able to play these samples. Let's come over here. Here it is in its original form. And all the way up it goes like that. What I like to do is actually put these on my controller keyboard and play them like notes of a keyboard. Usually when I'm in cycle mode and I'm sort of engrossed into the music, and I can just experiment with adding layers and adding some different depth and dimension sourced from the sample here. Maybe I comp a part around the existing part. Let's get some of this other stuff off here.
You could be high.
So let's play some of these.
You could be high. You could be high.
Nothing too awe-inspiring there, but you get the idea. That's just the rudimentary step. The bigger concept comes when you take this EXS instrument and you convert it into a multi-output instrument. Now what I'm able to do is take a variety of samples, all coming from the same instance of the converted EXS instrument, and take different samples and assign them to their own separate outputs, which then allow me to EQ one sample differently from the next. It allows me to add a different set of dynamics to one sample over the next and build a part based around sound sourced from the original and a different range of dynamics, such as reverb, which adds depth front and back in a room, or delay, which adds some spatial left and right stereo components, which working together can, give you much more richness and depth to the sounds. And I find that for me personally, playing them on the keyboard is so much more engaging and fun and creative than simply cutting slices with a scissor tool and just moving blocks of region or data around on a grid. This feels more like paint by numbers, whereas if I'm actually replaying the samples with a whole host of other sounds to it, dynamics attached to it, I can get some more rich in-depth layers to the sound, which then help me build a more compelling intro and perhaps outro. So what you see here, let's just color code this. The length of the original is pretty short. It occupies the space here, which I will now turn red and zoom in on. This is the length of the original, which I leave intact once I give it to the listeners. But prior to that, coming from the DJ world, I like dynamic introductions, things that sort of filter in. They come in from the back of the space through perhaps some reverb techniques and a slow build. It's like an opening chapter of a book. But once the original is in, I kind of leave it in and let it do its thing. And then try to maybe take it to another level of emotion, higher or lower, near the end, and let that play out in an outro. So let me play you this, and then I'll explain what you're hearing. Let's go ahead and solo these guys. These regions right here, which I just highlighted, are all done with the method of that EXS convert option I showed you earlier. What we have, though, is even though they're the same instrument, I've placed different parts on different regions so that I could easily edit them. I don't want to have to go into a single region every time and take out only that note here, and then that note there, and then that note there. I want to be able to just quickly say, you know what, I don't like this coming in there. I'm just going to mute it. And I don't like it in there. I'm going to mute it there. But just know these are not three separate sampler instruments. It's the single sample instrument denotated here by the color fuchsia, hot pink if you're nasty. Here is the single instrument. Let's open this up and show you what we got going on here. All of those slices that were done automatically for me based on the zero crossing point are listed here. This is the note that they occupy on the keyboard range. They have no bearing to the actual note of the key of the sample. But this is an important function right here that I like to use a lot too. I can take specific samples in the performance that I've played and assign them to their own separate outputs, thus allowing me to EQ them separately, have different dynamics on them, and maybe combine a range of different dynamics, different volumes, and perhaps even different panning to create an overall part that has a lot more dynamic capacity to it than just a single instrument with a single region and one steady set of dynamics assigned to that. So let's see what we got here when we solo this.
You could be happy.
Here we go. I'm going to play it for you right now with the original sitting on top of all this, but then I'll just take this away so you can hear the layer by itself. Now here are the layers by themselves. Let's take a look at what's happening here on the mixer front. You have one set of samples coming through here and hitting a reverb and a delay. That would be this. Here we go. Pretty techy, hypnotic, doesn't do much all by itself over a long period of time. Then you add this note. This one's coming through, just going to a completely separate reverb. No additional delay to that sound. And then a third layer. This has a little bit going to the same delay that this one is going to, and much more of a send over to a different delay entirely. Now this one's a stereo delay, bus 4 right there. Two different note values, very little feedback. Just sort of allows it to bounce around in the stereo field left and right. Now listen to these two bounce around together. And then yet another one. There it is. Let's solo this guy. The cool thing about separating these sounds is you can get really dynamic and creative with the effects that you put on specific samples, and rather than having it all come through the same dynamic pack, as if you were pushing all of these through a single set of outputs. I could put a little auto filter on. Let's see where this comes in. Come over here. I did not have this on the original remix version that I did. I just set this up for the purpose of demonstration to show you what, some of the things that are possible. You can get as insane as you want or as subtle as you wish. All depends on the material that you're working with. Let's put it all back together. That sounds a little too much to me, but the point here is that by using the multi-output functionality of the EXS, or any sampler that you might use, whether it be battery or perhaps an MPC or something like that that has separate outputs, I definitely encourage you to treat your quote-unquote samples as a series of different separate pieces of audio that all work together in harmony to make that single part take place. And what's nice about being able to construct it in layers is that you can introduce and then deconstruct it in layers as well, and it has more of a rolling hill effect as it comes in and out of your song, rather than it's just in or out. Things can evolve over time and have more subtlety to them as they're introduced. They can build up into a nexus of emotion and power, and then be deconstructed slowly over time to make it appear as if the part just sort of disappears underneath the other components of your remix. And again, I'm really big on at least starting with finding these sound sources from the original. It makes for a much more seamless, integrated remix. You can get really micro with the effects and the dynamics, and allowing you to create really compelling intros and outros or middle sections, but the tones and the textures are all going to relate to the original, so that it has a much more seamless component to it, rather than finding 7, 8, 12, 32 different competing sounds on top of a track like this, which is already full. There's a couple things soloed here. Two things are happening here. We have a steady section here from the EXS instrument derived from this region up here. Both are filtering up together. Let's take a look at this EQ. It's a real subtle high cut that is opening up over time, giving it more air and some more clarity to it. And the same thing is happening over here. And again, a quick solo. Real subtle, but it adds just a perfect amount of extra texture to this section as it continues to filter up. And if we wanted to, we can come in here to the edit section again. Maybe we take this note And I might even, just for the heck of it, experiment with like detuning in it. That's a pretty regularly occurring note, so that wouldn't make sense, but maybe its neighbor next door. Because this is on output 5 and 6, I could easily go into the auxiliary channel strip, where that is now assigned to 5 and 6 right here. Maybe give it a different EQ setting. Minimize some frequencies, enhance some frequencies, do a filter sweep. Now I have evolving content and dynamic content that is happening underneath where the original is set. It just helps to make a very a less linear composition. These kinds of techniques that I employ for remixes that I do a lot end up having a more fluid and evolving capacity to them. Let's turn this guy down. I'm going to jump ahead here and let's hear how it comes in underneath the back half of the song. I hope this short tutorial's been a help. Feel free to experiment. If you got any questions, hit me up at the links below. And I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Very much like to thank Pyramide for hosting me here once again. I think this institution is really cool, and until I came here for the first time, I had never seen anything like it in my whole life.
What I think really separates us from other people who teach is that we are outrageously passionate about what we do, and especially in electronic music.
Since coming to Pyramide, I've discovered electronic music, and San Francisco being a mecca for underground electronic music opened up so many doors for me and kind of blew my mind.
We cover everything from Absynth to Contact. When people get to the mind-melting level, we get into modular synthesis.
Everything about native instruments, everything about Logic synths down to the finest detail. We learned it all.
The fundamentals of understanding how things work, that's just essential. But then beyond that, there's so much more, and that's where it gets into just a lot of the artistic side of like the creative approach of why you do something, not just how.
There's a lot of schools that just, they focus on the technicality of recording music, but I wanted something that would foster creativity and really help me develop as an artist as well.
Each of our genre-specific programs comes in 4 levels. There's a basic, an advanced, a professional, and then a master's level. And the master's level is, of course, everything we do. It's the largest and most powerful programs that we can create for you.